All right. Hey, you caught me just as I was about to enjoy this tasty burger and fries and soda for breakfast. But I'm glad that you're here because today we're going to be taking a look at filming locations for a 90s classic that this year in 2024 is celebrating its 30th anniversary. And I'm talking about Pulp Fiction, which is a movie that has always...
down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger.
Hello?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Yeah, I was right in the middle of doing a video intro.
Do you mind if I have some of your tasty beverage?
Yeah, I do mind. Okay, I guess go ahead and help yourself. You know what? You can go ahead and just finish that. Well, let's go see what we can find. So for the beginning of the movie, we find ourselves here on Hawthorne Boulevard in the city of Hawthorne at what used to be the Hawthorne Grill, but it's now an AutoZone. And we actually get a shot just like this one later in the movie because not only does the film begin here, but it also ends here as well. And although Hawthorne Grill is long gone, a lot of the stuff here can still be seen, like this fire hydrant and this stop sign, and also across the street, the sign for that Ford dealership. When Pumpkin and Honey Bunny are sitting at their table just before they rob the diner, you can see this building across the street through their window. So that means right here in this parking spot, this is where Pumpkin and Honey Bunny's booth was. And later in the movie, there's a lot more stuff around here that can be matched up, and we'll get to that a little bit later in this video. And that brings us to the introduction of Vincent and Jules. We first get introduced to them as they're driving in their car, having that long dialogue about Vincent's recent stay in Amsterdam. It's a very famous scene, I'm sure you're familiar with it. You know, the whole Royale with cheese thing.
Royale with cheese.
That's right.
Even if you don't remember it from this movie, you might remember it from The Simpsons.
They don't call it a crusty burger with cheese.
Get out. Well, what do they call it?
A quarter pounder with cheese.
Quarter pounder with cheese?
Well, that entire dialogue takes place right here on Sunset Boulevard. It actually begins right here at Sunset and McCaden Place. We first see them passing by McCaden Place, and you can see this building. You can recognize those two windows right there. They continue west down Sunset Boulevard, and they pass by a building that at one time was a somewhat unique, vintage-looking Carl's Jr. That building has since been torn down, and it's now a Chick-fil-A. They then pass through the intersection of Sunset Boulevard and Highland, and on the next corner is an empty lot. I believe shortly after that it was a McDonald's. It was then some type of a nursery, and it's now Kevin Hart's vegan restaurant, which actually just shut down. Right after that, they pass by what appears to be an automotive garage. As you can see, that building is still here. However, it's a little bit different. It looks like it's been converted into some type of an office building. They then pass by a motel, which is still here, but it's been remodeled. It's now a different color and a few things have been changed, but for the most part, the basic layout of the motel is still the same. They then pass by another motel, which is still here and still looks the same, along with the building right next door. Now, all of the buildings that you see in passing here, this entire block was bulldozed and rebuilt, I believe, a couple of different times, so nothing here looks the same. On the next block, they pass by an empty lot right on the corner, which is now where the IHOP is. Now, this IHOP has been here for as long as I can remember, so I'm gonna guess that this was probably built right after the movie was made. Now, right next to the IHOP, they pass by an office building, and this is actually how I was able to figure out where they're driving. On that building, if you look closely, you can see the address 7014. And here's that building. It still looks the same, and it still has the address 7014. They continue west to the end of the block, and they're now still on Sunset, but they're back in the other direction about a mile. They're now passing by the famous Sunset Studios, and they now pass by a shopping center that has a 7-Eleven and a Pizza Hut. You can see there's the 7-Eleven, and the Pizza Hut is still here as well, although it's got an updated sign. They then pass by this building, and the scene ends. So the scene begins with a shot similar to this one, with the camera looking out of the trunk as Vincent and Jules get their stuff together. And you might have already noticed that the building does not look the same as the one that you see in the movie, and that's because this is a completely different apartment building. The one that was used in the movie, I believe, was torn down not long after the movie was made, and then for years this was just an empty lot, and then eventually they built this nice new luxury apartment building. Now I wanted to recreate that shot with my camera looking up at me from inside my trunk, but I wasn't able to park my car here because in real life this is actually the exit for the freeway, so there's constantly traffic driving right past here. So after they finish loading up their stuff, Vincent and Jules are walking down this sidewalk, and behind them you can see that apartment building on the other side of the freeway. Notice the fire escape. They continue down the sidewalk, and there's some yellow posts that you can see across the street. Most of them now are covered by this wall. They pass by this tree. I'm pretty sure this is the exact same tree that you see in the movie. And then as they get a little closer to the entrance of the building, across the street, you can see the sign for the Denny's on Sunset. Now that Denny's has been there my entire life, but guess what? Within the last few years, that Denny's was torn down and it's now just an empty parking lot. They then head inside of the apartment building, and that's where the famous scene takes place with Brett and his friends and Big Kahuna Burger. And I was looking forward to matching up those shots with Vincent and Jules in the lobby and hanging out in the halls, but like I said, that building has actually been gone since the 90s, so not gonna happen. This building right here is Stars Gentleman Club in Gardena, California, and I don't really have any proof on this one, but there's a couple of different sources that say that this was used as Marcellus Wallace's club, you know, where he has the meeting with Butch. And it's definitely possible because there's some other scenes for the movie that were filmed here in the South Bay, and it seems like Quentin Tarantino likes filming in the South Bay, so it's definitely a possibility. I just can't say 100%. So I think this one is just gonna have to be a maybe. Right now I'm high up in the hills of Beverly Hills, and right over here on the other side of all these trees, you can just barely see a house. And if you go around to the front of this house, there's more trees and a wall, and it's got a very long driveway, and you can't see very much of this house from the street, but this was used as the home of Mia and Marcellus Wallace. And I guess you don't really see a lot of the outside of the house in the movie either. You just see that long path that leads up to the front door. But they also filmed inside of this house. Or they also filmed in the backyard of this house with Marcellus sitting by the pool talking on the phone. But all of that stuff with Mia and Vincent inside of the house, all of that was filmed right here. And luckily, there's some pictures that we can find online of this house so we can match up those shots. So Vincent comes here and he picks up Mia and he then takes her to Jackrabbit Slim's. So that brings us to a location that still exists. Well, kinda, sorta. I mean, Jackrabbit Slim's never really did exist. All of the interiors were built inside of a warehouse in Culver City where they built the rest of the sets for the movie. But the exteriors of Jackrabbit Slim's, well, that was this building right here behind me. Once an old bowling alley, which you can kind of tell just by looking at it, it's now owned by Disney, and I believe it's part of the Imagineering department, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But it was right here in this parking lot where Vincent and Mia pull up, and there's all those motorcycles in between Vincent's car and the building. And so that means it was right here in front of me where Mia calls Vincent a rectangle? And I gotta say, it's pretty cool that this building is still here, even though they were really just out here for, I don't know what, like 30 seconds, because like I said, all the rest of that scene was inside of a warehouse. Now, if you walk around to the side of the building, you can get a little bit closer, but you don't ever get this angle in the movie. But I wanted to show this because if you come onto the side of the building, you'll find the address, and the address looks like a Disneyland name tag. But yeah, right here on the other side of this wall, that's Jackrabbit Slim's. Again, at least the exteriors of Jackrabbit Slim's. After Mia overdoses, Vincent is rushing and trying to get her somewhere where he can save her life. And we see Vincent's car come racing around the corner. And that was filmed right here on Hollywood Boulevard. I believe Vincent's car is turning off of Cherokee Avenue onto Hollywood Boulevard. And there's still a few things here that you can match up. First of all, you can see this row of palm trees that's right in front of Musso and Frank's Grill. And it looks a little bit different, but you can also see this building that's on the next corner along with the sign that's on top of it. And you can see the building across the street. You can see all of these arches with that row of windows that's above the arches. And you can also see these three windows, although they look a lot more compressed in the movie. Now, what stands out the most is way down there on Hollywood Boulevard, you can see a tower that says Pacific on it. That is still there and still looks the same. And as Vincent continues down the street and pulls out his cell phone to call Lance, we see him pass right by this building, which is actually in the opposite direction on Hollywood Boulevard. So right now I'm walking through a quiet neighborhood in the Atwater Village area of Los Angeles, just about 15 minutes away from where the Jackrabbit Slim's building was. And this house right over here, this was Lance's house. Now, you never do get this shot in the movie. The camera is looking from inside the house and from the front porch, but that does appear to be the same door that we see in the movie, or at least a very similar door. Now, what you really see is when Lance comes walking out of the front door, you can see an apartment building across the street, and that's this building right here. You can also see this tree. And it was right here where Vincent's car goes across the front lawn and crashes into the porch. Now, of course, they did build a fake breakaway porch, but you can see that red brick pillar is very similar to the one that you see in the movie. You can see the house next door, which is now somewhat covered by a tree, but the house appears to look pretty much the same as it does in the movie. Now, something that's really cool about this location is it was used for exterior and interior shots. So not only was it right here in front of the house where Vincent crashes his car into the porch, but when they give Mia the shot and everything else that happens inside, that was filmed inside of this house. So after Butch wins the fight that he was supposed to take a dive in the 5th round, we see him climbing out of a window into an alley where he has a taxi cab waiting for him. Now that alley is supposedly right behind the arena where the boxing match takes place, which is actually right over here. I'll show you that in a minute. But the alley that he climbs into, I believe, is right down here. It's actually down here and around the corner. This is the alley right here. Hayes Alley, where it hits Kendall Alley. This right here is Kendall Alley. And this is Hayes. And this is the alley we're looking for, but the camera is looking in the opposite direction, looking towards me. The cab would have been sitting pretty much right here in front of me. He jumps out of those windows and into a dumpster that was right here. But the place where the boxing match takes place is actually right over here on the other side of this building. So this is the actual alley that's behind the theater. As you can see, not as cool looking as the one that he jumps into, which, just to give you an idea, is right over there. It's actually right behind these buildings. I think he would have been jumping out of this building right here, I think. So after Butch makes his escape from the boxing match, he has the taxi bring him to the shady motel that he's staying at, and it used to be located right here. Yep, another building that has since been torn down. This is now a business called Taylor Brothers. There is, however, some stuff here that you can still match up, and you see that a little bit later in the movie, so we'll get to that in a little bit. When Butch realizes that his father's watch is missing, he heads back to his apartment to grab the watch, but he parks on the next block, which is right here. He pulls up in front of this utility pole and parks right where this truck currently is. He cautiously gets out of his car, and you can see these 2 apartment buildings, and he then walks down the side of the apartments to an empty field right behind him. That path is on the other side of these cars, but it's now gated off and the empty field no longer exists. So this building right here behind me, this is Butch's apartment building, at least the exteriors. Now the building itself still looks the same. There's just a bunch of trees now that are blocking the front of the building, and you can't really get that same shot that we see in the movie. Now, right over here, this was the big empty field that Butch comes walking through, and then he's standing here looking at his building across the street, but there's now a brand new apartment building built where that empty field used to be. Now, as I mentioned, this building was only used for exteriors, and you might have already noticed in that scene, once he gets inside and he's walking through the courtyard, it looks a little bit different. I mean, if you notice right here, there is no courtyard. On the other side of that gate is a staircase that leads to 4 different apartments. He would have walked through the gate and then he was walking through a big open courtyard. Now, the real giveaway is when he's leaving the apartment and the camera is shooting from inside of the courtyard, looking through the gate, and you can see that it's a completely different type of security gate, and you can see some kind of a structure across the street, but that would have been the big empty field. And that's how you can really tell that they used 2 different buildings. Unfortunately, for some reason, nobody knows the location of that other apartment building. Right here behind me, you can see the Foster's Freeze that sits on the corner of Atwater Avenue and Fletcher Drive. Now in the movie, this was Teriyaki Donut, which means that it was right here where Butch is sitting in his car as Marcellus Wallace is walking across the crosswalk, getting ready to enjoy his big box of donuts. He then notices Butch and the chase is on. So we're now about 30 miles away from where we just were. We're on the west side of the San Fernando Valley, and we see Butch running past this brick wall. He then runs right past this door. Now we don't actually see it in the movie, but Butch would have got up and walked right down this path. He would have come right down here and stumbled inside of this pawn shop right here, Crown Pawn Shop. You can see not too much has changed here. Of course, some of the signage on the front has changed. It has been 30 years, but the front of the store still looks the same, including the shop next door, which is now a barber shop. Not sure what it was at the time, but this is it. And they did film inside of here as well. So almost nothing has changed inside of the pawn shop. I actually think this is the exact same counter and the exact same shelves that you see in the movie. Now there is no Confederate flag by the front door, and of course there's no stairs leading down to a basement. That was filmed on a set, but everything else that you see in the pawn shop was filmed right here. And if you get a chance to stop in here, I definitely would. The owner was really nice, and he was telling me that they get people from all over the world coming in every day asking about Pulp Fiction. And he's actually got some photos hung up that he took from when they were filming the movie, including a picture of him with Bruce Willis. So now that Butch has escaped and gone back in and set everything straight with Marcellus, he comes back out front of the pawn shop, and right here was Zed's motorcycle.
It's a chopper, baby.
Zed's chopper, and Butch hops on and takes off. And he comes back here to the shady motel that he's staying at. Once again, that was this building, now Taylor Brothers. Now, as I promised, there's still some stuff here that you can match up. As he's pulling out of the motel, next to him, you can see this building, which almost nothing has changed on this building. It's still Thomas Rug Cleaning Company, and I think this building looks exactly the same as it did. He comes out of the driveway and he makes a left, and when he does, you get this shot. You see the bridge, you see the rug cleaning company and that building right next to it, and then the White House looking building. And like I said, almost nothing has changed here. There's maybe some new trees and bushes, maybe a couple of other things, but for the most part, this is the shot that you get in the movie. So this is a location that I really wanted to find, and I searched long and hard for it. I don't think anyone else has ever found it, and I was finally able to track it down. It was a little bit of a collaboration with my wife and my son. Together, we were able to finally figure out this location. I'm currently standing in front of Forest Lawn Mortuary. You can see the sign there behind me, and if you look over here, you can see the large mortuary building. But this sign that you see behind me, this is not the original sign. If you look on Google Maps, go back maybe about 15 years, you'll see that this sign used to look like a giant open book. Now, that would tell us that it was right over here, just past this sign. This is the very spot where Vincent accidentally shoots Marvin in the face. Kind of hard to see in the movie, but if you pause it, you put it in slow-mo, you can see a sign that they passed by that looks like a large open book. You can also see that the road that they're on is curving, and it has that yellow sign to let you know that the road curves. There's also a large parking lot on their right side. That would be the parking lot here for Forest Lawn. And then just beyond Forest Lawn, you can see a building that has some small windows, and there's a school bus parked in front of the building. That building is still there, but it's now blocked by all of these trees. But if we go on the other side of these trees, there's the building, and there's those little windows. And so when you put all of that together, that's how you know that it was right here in this very spot where Vincent shoots Marvin in the face.
I didn't mean to do it, it was an accident.
So this right here, this was Jimmy's house. And you never really do see the front of this house in the movie. The only thing that was actually filmed out here in front of the house was that one shot looking up the center of the street when the wolf pulls up. And you can see an address on the curb that says 4149, which is actually the house next door. Now what this house was used for was the garage when they're cleaning up the car, and then in the backyard, and all of the shots inside of the house, like when they're talking about the coffee, and then when Jimmy and the wolf are talking sitting by the window. So after they get the car all cleaned up, they bring it to Monster Joe's wrecking yard, which was right here, a wrecking yard in real life, just not really called Monster Joe's. Now, this is the gate that the wolf comes walking out of. It looks a little bit different now. However, the sign for Monster Joe's, I believe that was this sign right here. The sign and the post still look the same. Of course, it does not say Monster Joe's anymore because, like I said, that was just for the movie. So the wolf comes walking out of this gate. Vincent and Jules are standing right here looking stupid. They have a brief exchange, and the wolf then gets into his car that was parked right over here, and he then drives off down Bradford. And after the wolf drives away, Vincent and Jules are standing here talking about what they're gonna do next, and behind them, you can just barely see those orange and white smokestacks. For the finale of the movie, we find ourselves back here at the former location of the Hawthorne Grill. And during that big finale, there's a lot of stuff that can be seen through the windows outside of the restaurant. Some of that stuff is still here, and we can still match it up. Well, that's going to do it for this video. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.